Demon Child, an Order of Rain short story by James Byron Clark. Chapter 2, Ode. The wedding was finally over, Mike thought. Mike loosened his bow tie as he gazed at the lovely features of his wife. My wife, he thought. The thought made him smile. Kelly looked radiant, still clad in her wedding gown that, although simple, seemed to accent every feature, every curve of her body. The wedding was pleasant enough. Kelly's friends were there, those she trusted and confided in, as well as her family. Her retinue was large, in contrast to Mike's crowd, which only included a few programmer friends and his mother, Minka. It was a simple wedding, but he could see that Kelly was happy. Her beautiful face radiated with a light that came from within, her auburn hair glistening in the sunlight as she finally became Mrs. Johnson. Her friends were kind enough to Mike, some he knew from high school. However, he could not shake the feeling that deep down they thought of him as unworthy for their Kelly. Still insecure, Mike scolded himself. "They do like you, you know," Kelly said. Mike was startled. "What?" Kelly smiled and turned her back to him. "Help me out of this dress, will you?" she said playfully. "You got that look again, the 'I don't think they liked me' look." "They think I'm not worthy of you," Mike replied, as he struggled to find the zippers, buttons, or whatever it was that came between him and her body. He finally found them and loosened the dress, revealing Kelly's silky skin as she shrugged her wedding dress off. "They don't know you, and I don't think I really want them to," Kelly said, as she turned and lifted her legs out of the pile that was her wedding dress. She was clad in black satin underwear, leaving little to the imagination, but enough to give her an aura of mystery. "If they knew who you really are, they might get jealous and try to get you for themselves." She reached for his bow tie and removed it. "I wouldn't want that," she said with a wry smile. "I was always a nobody," Mike said. She looked at him as she unbuttoned his shirt. "You were always somebody to me, and now there's nobody else." She unbuttoned his slacks, kneeling as she did so, gently lowered them to the floor. "You're so much more than what you think you are." She grasped his boxers, pulling them down with a naughty smile. "So much more." She stood up, kissed him, and pushed him to the bed. She stood over him, gazing into his eyes. "I love you, Michael Johnson, and don't you ever think otherwise." "I love you too, Kelly Johnson, always and forever," Mike replied as he reached up for his new wife. Mike looked over at his sleeping wife. Her auburn hair framed her pretty face. Her lips pursed slightly, purring contentedly with the beginnings of a snore as she lay quietly in bed. Mike took a lingering glance at her exposed body before covering it with the blanket. What a lucky guy, he thought to himself. Mike grinned in spite of himself. He was feeling giddy with happiness. Here he was with his new bride at the start of their married life, the start of a shared future filled with promise and hope. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived, who you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. Mike smiled at the thought. Poetry had always comforted him during his lonely past, and for some reason Edgar Allan Poe's ode seemed fitting to this night. I was a child, and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee, with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. It's been one night, and you're already calling another woman's name, Kelly chided him. Startled, Mike turned to his wife, surprised that he had been speaking aloud. She laid there, eyes closed, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. She spoke, but our love was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we. She opened her eyes, brown gazing to his blue, and her smile shining more brightly than the first light seeping into the bedroom. I always loved poetry. If you had regaled me with that earlier instead of just this past year, we may have been together sooner." Mike embraced her, her soft skin pressing into his. "You're the only woman in my life, Kelly, and I don't regret waiting for you. It's just that I really don't know any poems with your name, except, of course, the one I made up for you when we were young. Smelly Kelly, bulging belly, Mike was interrupted with a pillow to his face. "Smelly Kelly, huh?" Kelly retorted, laughter in her voice. "Well, I don't know about that, but maybe you can make the second line come true. Unless, of course, you find me revoltingly smelly." She held his hand in hers. "Why don't you come here and give me a bulging belly?" she said, more of a statement than a request. Mike grinned. "I'll be more than happy to try," he said. "Let's name him Edgar if it's a boy," Kelly said, removing the blanket that covered her. "And if it's a girl?" Kelly grinned. "Well, seeing as you're already fixated on this Annabelle Lee, that name sounds so old. Have pity on the poor child. Annabelle, then. Come here, and let's try to make little Annabelle." Kelly smiled as she pulled him into her.